kingdom here, let the darkness fear. Show your mighty hand, heal our streets and land.
I admit that I don't think about the 10 Commandments on a regular basis. And when I do, I often think about this kind of image. I have this sort of mental picture of something that I saw and memorized back in Sunday school. And so I think, well, actually, I can probably, do pretty well keeping these commandments without paying conscious attention to them. But then when I pause to really consider, I realize there's a gap in my obedience. I look over them and I think, yeah, tick, no other gods before me, no idol worships, tick, you shall not take the Lord's name in vain, tick, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Ooh, maybe not so good on keeping the Sabbath, but hey, it's not really relevant in the 21st century, is it? Honor father and mother, tick, yep, not killing anyone, yep, no adultery, no stealing, yep, no lying, all good, 9 out of 10, doing pretty well. But I can't shake that uncomfortable feeling that my indifference to the Sabbath commandment may mean that I'm actually missing out on God's best for my life. Simply put, Sabbath is a day set apart by God for rest. And ironically, rest is something I would really like more of, but I struggle to fit it into my busy life. And it isn't just me, because when I look around, I seem to be surrounded by many very busy people who just don't get enough rest. Our Western perspectives on time and time use have gradually changed so that shops and services are no longer closed on Sundays, and our community now operates on a 24/7 schedule. Productivity and achievement are highly valued. We should take every opportunity to be doing more, earning more, achieving more. Even if we personally don't aspire to wealth or fame, that tendency to allow the striving Adam part of us to dominate can result in people who love Jesus striving so hard to serve him and serve the people around them that they're exhausting themselves doing it. All of these things contribute to this challenge we face of remembering the Sabbath day, of taking a holy day of rest. I suspect that many in our congregation will identify with the experience of feeling too busy and having too little time to rest. Then others may not feel overly busy, but perhaps experience each day of the week similarly, with no one day being set apart as different or dedicated to holy rest. A tremendous number of books and resources about Sabbath day rest have been published in recent years, which suggests to me that this challenge of remembering the Sabbath is widespread in the Western Church. There's actually a lot in the Bible about Sabbath, and that Bible Project video gave us a helpful overview. So let's have a look now at some of the key passages. So if we look at the 10 Commandments, sorry, each time the slide comes up, it changes my view. There we go. When we look at the 10 Commandments as they are recorded in Exodus, there's more detail than that classic Sunday school image. In fact, there's a lot of text to see all 10 of them. 8 of the commandments make it clear what we should not do. They start with, you shall not, while 2 in the middle call us to do certain things, to remember the Sabbath and to honor your father and mother. In fact, I notice a few other interesting features of this 4th commandment, which is highlighted here about the Sabbath. It starts quite differently. It starts, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. It's like God anticipated that this is something people might easily forget. It also feels a bit to me more like an invitation. Remember the Sabbath day. This is something special. This will support your well-being. Looking at the text, we can also see that this 4th instruction is the longest of the 10. Perhaps God knew that people would question the idea of not working for a whole day, and so there's more detail provided. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, but he rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. And then a little further on in Exodus chapter 23, there's a recap of this instruction with the purpose of the Sabbath made very clear. 6 days you do your work, but on the 7th day do no work, so that your ox and your donkey may rest, and so that the slave born in your household and the foreigner living among you may be refreshed. There's nothing ambiguous about this. This is a clear instruction and invitation to rest on the Sabbath day. God had rescued his people from slavery in Egypt, and he was presenting them with a radical gift, a new pattern for the week, a dedicated day of rest so that they might be refreshed. Through the Bible, we see that the Jewish people embraced this Sabbath day, but over time, there must have been questions and debates about the finer points of what was really meant by it. So the leaders developed rules to help define what was work or what could or couldn't be done on the Sabbath. And like many other areas of Jewish life, over time, Sabbath keeping became legalistic, a rule-keeping exercise, rather than just a day of joyful, holy rest. So let's think about what we can learn from Jesus' life and ministry. Jesus was Jewish, and Sabbath was part of the rhythm of his life, but not something he slavishly obeyed. There are multiple gospel accounts of the religious teachers and leaders being outraged by Jesus' actions and teachings on the Sabbath. He did things like allow his disciples to pick and eat grain while walking through a field, and he dared to heal people on the Sabbath. He was even so bold as to refer to himself as Lord of the Sabbath. So let's have a look at the account in Mark 2. Can you bring up the slide, please, Sean? One Sabbath day, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and as his disciples walked along, they began to pick some heads of grain. The Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are they doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" He answered, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need? In the days of Abiathar the high priest, he entered the house of God and ate the consecrated bread, which is lawful only for priests to eat. And he also gave some to his companions. Then he said to them, 'The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord, even of the Sabbath.'" When I read verse 27, "The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath," I realized that God designed Sabbath to be a gift. Remembering the Sabbath is not meant to be a burden or restriction, but rather a freedom, a countercultural permission to rest. As we started this series on spiritual practices, we looked at Jesus' invitation to come to him in Matthew 11. If we can have the next slide, please. We've already mentioned this one a couple of times through this service. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." We see Jesus as a compassionate master who values rest for his people, to the point of setting aside one day each week for rest. This Sabbath day is a gift, an opportunity to nurture the soulful Adam part of us. It's a gift, a day when we're invited just to be rather than to do. In our heads, we do know that when we pause to rest, we experience refreshment and we're better able to do our doing tasks. But in our culture, with widespread lack of rest leading to significant health problems, researchers are gathering evidence about the importance of time for being rather than doing, and how dedicated rest time can actually increase our productivity. It's an ironic case of what's old being new. Long ago, God created the gift of Sabbath, and now experts are telling us that a regular day off is good for our health. It's one of those kingdom paradoxes, now upheld by science, that we are healthier and more effective when we have dedicated time to rest. Let's think about what a Sabbath rest day might look like. There are debates between different branches of the church about which day is the true Sabbath. Given Jesus' criticism of legalistic approaches, I believe it's more important that we focus on the purpose of the Sabbath gift rather than being religious about whether it's a Saturday or whether it's a Sunday. There are plenty of pastors and shift workers who set aside a weekday to be their Sabbath. So what does it look like to have a holy day of rest? Different theologians and writers have put forth their thoughts and described Sabbath as an opportunity for nurturing our relationship with God and relationships with others, for reflection, for prayer, for rest, for rejuvenation. Perhaps the simplest way of summarizing the different things that people say is that Sabbath is a day for resting, for praying, and for playing. It's a time to slow down and to do things that bring restoration and joy and bring us into an awareness of God's presence and his love for us. However, as we saw in the skit, many of us have become so busy that it just doesn't feel possible to take hold of the gift of Sabbath. In this Survival Guide for the Soul series, we're learning about spiritual practices. And so I think it's important that we take a practical approach, moving from thinking and talking about the idea of Sabbath to considering what it could actually look like in practice and making practical steps toward taking hold of it. Most of us will not be able to suddenly stop doing things one day of the week. Just tear that page out of your calendar. It's going to take thought, planning, and deliberate effort to be able to take hold of the Sabbath gift. So let's start thinking together about what taking hold of a Sabbath gift might look like in our own lives. We're going to use a digital whiteboard to brainstorm ideas about how we rest, pray, and play. So I encourage you to have your own pen and paper or journal ready so that as we write up ideas, you can note down any that you might like to consider in your own life. We'll work through the ideas one at a time. And what I'd like you to do is unmute yourself to make suggestions about what it might look like to rest, pray, and play. So I'm going to start off by suggesting reading as a way that I like to rest.
Less screen time.
Ah, yes. Good one.
Sleeping in.
Sleeping in, yeah, actually sleep is a pretty good way to rest. So if we think about rest, we're thinking about activities that are restful for your body, restful for your mind, restful for your spirit.
Playing an instrument.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on, maybe that's playing.
Okay, pop it in there while we think of that.
But I find it restful.
And that's an interesting point, that some of these activities may cross over. We'll come back to that.
Being around nature.
Ah, being in nature.
Not look at the bank statement.
Oh, yeah. So not doing work is important on these when we're resting. Not thinking about the perhaps the logistics of life. It's a day for stepping away from that. Any other things that are restful for us physically or mentally or spiritually?
Hanging out with people that bring you rest or restoration. So could be your family, could be friends.
Yeah. So that kind of that mutually edifying relationships, spending time with people who build you up.
limit the time that we expose ourselves to the media and to COVID related stuff.
Yeah, yep. And I think some of these we're getting into the next section that we'll brainstorm too about the things that we can do to make sure we get to engage in rest, pray, and play.
We should include last week's message, which is meditation.
All right, so let's move on to prayer and thinking about prayer in the broadest way that we can. So really, how do we connect with God? So meditation is a great one. It might be kind of things that you do to pray, things that you do to worship, ways that you feel close or connected to God.
I find planting in the garden.
Ah, yes. That's a good one.
I was
Actually,
gonna say spending time in nature might come into prayer as well.
yes, yep. Prayer walking, that's something that I like to do, having a nice long walk and talk with God.
Putting on worship music.
Ah, yeah.
Journaling.
Journaling, that's a good one. Just, ordinary praying, just sitting still and talking to God in the way that we classically understand prayer.
Praying together like we are now.
Yeah, joining together. That helps us to connect with God through the community of believers. Now, what about playing? This isn't playing in a hedonistic sense. This is about things that are playful, things that bring joy, that fill our tank, help us to know what it's like to be alive.
Painting.
Painting. I think could be a lot of different creative pursuits that could fit in here.
Sometimes cooking or baking.
Baking, yep.
Dancing.
Dancing's a good one. Playing might be things that we quite literally describe as playing, playing games with people, playing board games or having a kick of the ball or playing with the people in our family or close to us.
Hanging out with animals
Yeah.
and kids
Yep.
and just being young.
Yes, it's that joyful interactions. As you look at all these suggestions, it's quite likely you're going to find some of those really appealing and others might be completely off-putting for you. We're all wired differently, so it means that we've got different experiences of the same activities. For me, gardening is work, although we've just heard that Jenny enjoys being out there planting things and being in the garden. There's people who find that restful, people who find it meditative, people who find that allows them to pray and connect with God. So the specific activities that allow us to rest, pray, or play may look quite different for different people. And I think it's important not to become legalistic about what is or isn't work, because some of these things might be work for some people. Baking would be work for me, but that might be something that allows someone else to play or to pray or to rest. So we need to identify activities that for us allow us to nurture our soulful selves. We've done a bit of thinking about what we might like, how we might like to rest or pray or play on the Sabbath. So now we'll think about what we might need to do to be able to take hold of that Sabbath gift. It might be things we need to do on the other 6 days, or it might be things we need to not do on the Sabbath day. Most of us will fall into one of three groups. There's going to be those people for whom taking hold of the Sabbath gift could be quite straightforward. In fact, they might have been doing it for decades. There's going to be those of us who need to do some planning and to make some quite deliberate choices to be able to take hold of the Sabbath gift. Perhaps people who are working, people who are doing shift work, who've got lots of other commitments. And there's going to be other people for whom it might be really challenging to attain as a day of rest. I'm thinking particularly of a friend of mine who's got 4 children under 10 and another one on the way. And I think a day in the rest might just seem, day of rest for her must seem so far off. But remembering that the idea of Sabbath is countercultural, we may need to work towards it in stages, just gradually adjusting the routines and the rhythms of our life to be able to move towards taking hold of the Sabbath gift. So let's do some more thinking together. What things can we do or change to be able to take hold of the Sabbath gift? So just like before, unmute to share some suggestions, and also jot down any ideas that you think really speak to you or could be relevant in your own life. So we had some suggestions before that we can carry across, like I think we had limiting exposure to the media. We might want to expand that to really limit device time, if that's something that actually links to work and links to stress. This is a harder.
I would say, right, might be good to set boundaries.
Yeah, set boundaries. Can you give any examples of boundaries that might be helpful?
Well, you might just simply say Saturday afternoon is a time that I set aside, or that'd be a time boundary. There might be a work boundary. You might say, I will limit my work. I will keep in this space of days or whatever circumstance, creating other boundaries.
Yeah. So you actually can block time in your diary. This time is for Sabbath, or this time is for something else.
You can also block people.
Yes. Yep. So that's important to really consider which day or which portions of a day or days could be your Sabbath. And might need to be creative. We've got people who work on weekends or work. So might need to actually plan which bit is going to be the Sabbath bit.
One thing that I've seen you do, Lorraine, well, is plan ahead, in the sense that, so for example, make sure you do your washing loads on the Saturday so that there's no washing loads to do on the Sunday, and just frees you up to not have to do a lot of that, housey stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
So would you be saying that on the Sabbath, you wouldn't to make it a Sabbath day, that you wouldn't do things that have to get done? It's not, you block it out as an opportunity to get things done that have to be done. So yeah, you don't have to do anything on a Sunday. You don't have to wash. If you don't like cooking, or if you hate it, then you prepare all that on a Saturday.
Yeah, that's I think a really good way of describing it. That it's move the have-tos out of Sabbath time. There's going to be some have-tos that have to stay. Caring for people is really important. You can't move that out. But maybe if cooking's not your thing, it's something that doesn't bring joy, prepare ahead. If cleaning, household tasks, do them. Find other places where they could fit in the week, so that day can, as much as possible, be available for things that are restful, for things that allow you to pray and play. I think there was another suggestion coming through.
You have to be very deliberate about this as well if you're one of those people who naturally just fills space. Yes. So when you're first starting out doing this sort of thing, you have to be very deliberate about setting the boundary and say, okay, this is stop.
Yeah, very deliberate. And you know what? I'll let you all into a secret. Some of the things I do to force myself to rest, because I'm a doer, and I will look around the house and I will see things that need to be done. I'll just fix that. I'll just tie that. I'll just put away. Just send this message. And then I suddenly find my rest times disappear. So I have to, without, physically tying myself up, I have to put myself into a position to make it hard to just do those things. So perhaps putting up the hammock across the back deck and climbing into the hammock. So it's actually quite awkward to get get out of, and once I settle in there, I feel a bit or get into the bath. I get into the bath, then I can't just get up and go and do jobs around the house. So kind of knowing yourself and working out how you can put those boundaries in place.
And I think if you're a person that cares for people, like a counsellor or a doctor, you know, any of those caring professions, I think you have to be able to say no on your Sabbath day, that you're not caring. And even grandparents and, you know, parents of older adult children, to say no, you're not looking after anyone in that sense today.
I think, Jenny, that's what I was going to say. And I think to say no takes practice. So I was going to add practice how to say no, even to yourself, so that you can say yes to other life-giving things that you would do on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
That's very similar to what Nova was going to say.
Mum, I said that maybe the Sabbath day could be like yes day. You do all your work the day before, and then on like the yes day, I guess you could call it, you do what you want to do and what brings to God, like, I guess, a relationship with God and you yes day.
Very good. Very good. I think this idea of saying no is really important, and that might go beyond the Sabbath day. We might need to say no to commitments and opportunities during the week, because it just means that across the week we're trying to fit too much in, and that might risk spilling over into the Sabbath. The other thing where we might need to say no is also thinking about balancing what we're doing. So if we think about the rest and prayer and play, probably there's not a great risk of doing too much rest or prayer. We could actually go and do too much play, and there could be things that we find enjoyable and they bring us joy and they really energize us. But if we're rushing from seeing this group of people we love to this group of people we love to this group of people we love, and trying to fit in a game of this and paint a picture and do this as well, actually that stops being restful, and that starts being overloading again.
I love Nova's idea of a yes day, and like yes to a bath, yes to laying in the hammock.
Yes.
It's a lovely yes day to if you even term it to yourself, yes to me.
Yeah.
It can be yes to me. It's about thinking about me, whether that means me and God or me and just whatever. It's just yes to yourself might be a good place to start, and then allow room for how you might meditate inside of that yes day.
Yes, and because it's not meant to be a restriction, it's not, you cannot do anything on your Sabbath. It's actually, this is a gift. Let's think about how we can embrace it, how it can be a release and a recharge, a blessing for us. So we've got some really good ideas there. And the things that we can do or the changes that we can make are going to be shaped by the resources and the constraints in our own lives. And we may need to be creative about it. So now that we've done some brainstorming together, I'm going to invite us to spend a few minutes now to take that next step of thinking about how we can take hold of the Sabbath gift in our own lives. So we're going to play some music. And as the music's playing, I invite you to make notes in response to some questions. They'll come up on the screen. The questions are, what activities allow me to rest, pray, or play? What changes can I make to be able to take hold of the Sabbath gift? So we've been thinking about those two as a group. And what is the one thing I can do this week to start taking hold of the Sabbath? God never intended us to be walking the journey of life as individuals, but in community. If you're part of a couple or a family or a shared household, taking hold of the Sabbath gift will likely be a shared endeavour. Beyond our immediate households, we also need to consider how as a church community we can support each other to take hold of the Sabbath gift. The Exodus and Deuteronomy instructions for Sabbath spelled out that slaves and servants and foreigners living with the Jews must also be allowed a day of rest. So we have a responsibility to support the people around us to take hold of their Sabbath gift. This might be through holding each other to account, checking in with each other about whether you're making time for holy rest. Or there might be practical things that you could do or ways you could help to lighten their load and enable others to take hold of their Sabbath gift. There are a lot of resources to help us understand and take hold of the Sabbath gift. I've got some examples. Sean, if you can just share the slide. There's a book called 24/6, which is a lovely way to challenge the phrase. I'm sorry about my dog Angus, who's just got really excited right at this point. This is written by a doctor, and he just got really tired of being tired and busy in his own life and seeing patients all the time who were just overworked and exhausted. And he dived into this Sabbath concept and now has written a book and developed a lot of resources. There's a website really looking very practically about what changes we can make to make sure there's a Sabbath in our week. Then the other resource I'm suggesting there is by the guys from the Bible Project. So they took everything they could find in the Bible about the Sabbath and distilled it into the 5-minute video we saw. But there was a lot more in the Bible that they really dived into and explored. So there's a series of 14 podcasts really looking in deeply into what the Bible has to say about Sabbath. Thanks, Sean. We can stop that. Sabbath is a gift offered us by a loving God who invites us to spend time with him and to be healthy and whole with our striving selves and our soulful selves in balance. Because this idea of Sabbath sits opposed to the productivity and achievement orientation of Western culture, it requires a countercultural commitment for us to accept and embrace the gift of a weekly day of rest. To conclude, I invite you to imagine with me how our lives and our church community could be different if we choose to take hold of the Sabbath gift. Imagine taking a Sabbath day every week so that our bodies, minds, and spirits can rest and be renewed, and we can be reminded that we are loved by God. We then move into the other 6 days with a deep sense of calm, purpose, and energy, bringing blessing to those around us. What an impact that would make on our own lives and families, and how attractive that would be for others to see the church full of well-rested people who know they're loved by their Creator and are able to engage in their pursuits with a deep sense of joy and purpose. I'll finish with a Sabbath blessing written by Pete Greig of the 24/7 prayer movement. May this day bring Sabbath rest to our hearts and our homes. May God's image in us be restored and our imaginations in God be restored. May the gravity of material things be lightened and the relativity of time slow down. May we know grace to embrace our finite smallness in the arms of God's infinite greatness. May God's word feed us and his Spirit lead us into the week and into the life to come.